when the world has got you down. And
Alzheimer's sucks. It's an equal opportunity disease that chips away at everything we hold dear. And to date, there's no cure. So until there is, we continue to fight with the most powerful tool in our arsenal, love. This is Love Conquers Alz, a real and really positive podcast that takes a deep dive into everything Alzheimer's, the good, the bad, and everything in between. And now, here are your hosts, Susie Singer-Carter and me, Don Priest.
Hello, everybody. This is Susie Singer-Carter.
And this is Don Priest, and this is Love Conquers Alz. Hello, Susan.
Donald, how did you do today? How are you?
How'd you do?
How'd you do, Monsieur?
My lady. I'm fine. I'm good. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it was great. No, good. Hanging in. We're just, finished one documentary, rolling into another. And,
Don just finished a documentary. What's the name of it?
The name is Jack L. Warner, The Last Mogul, and it's about Jack Warner of Warner Brothers. So a lot of people don't even know that there were actual brothers, but there were. And this is a story of a very flawed, very amazing human being who kind of helped, was one of the pioneers of the film industry. It's on all the platforms now, iTunes and Apple TV, and it'll be run on from time to time on Turner Classic Movies, TCM.
TCM. I got the acronym wrong.
TMC, Turner Classic. It's one of those.
It's TCM. I screwed it up.
Yeah,
I screwed it up.
And so I just am finishing that up, or I have finished that up, and now we're rolling right into, what are we rolling into, Susan?
No Country for Old People, which is our documentary on the systemic nursing home crisis that we are trying to illuminate and get a collective conscience movement to get some change going, because it's been going on too long. And this weekend we had a fantastic shoot. We shot our interviews. We shot 3 wonderful interviews. Michael Wasserman, who's a geriatrician and also a massive advocate, and he's been interviewed on CNN and MSNBC, and he really is a very outspoken. And then we got to do our partner, Rick Mountcastle, who's a former attorney general who spent 25 years investigating and prosecuting nursing homes for fraud and abuse. And then we had a hospice doctor who was just phenomenal, who really gave us an inside look at the ins and outs, the politics, and really what hospice should look like. And it's fantastic. I mean, just FYI, this isn't going to be all gloom and doom. We want to find a solution. We want to keep everything, in a hopeful way, that we're not trying to create nihilists out there. So, and speaking of keeping it in a good way, that's not even a good segue.
No,
that's a terrible segue.
Terrible. It's one of the worst segues I've heard this morning. Yeah.
Well, God damn it! I think I can come up with a great. I think that I could say that I come up with the worst segues, which makes me the best at the worst.
The best? Oh, there's nobody better at the worst segues.
Yeah, and I love that. I'm proud of it.
Tops.
And Donald, today, for a terrible segue. In keeping with my terrible segues, we have 3 wonderful guests. This is a long overdue interview, because we know them very well. We know this organization very well, and yet we only know one of the founders. And it's going to be a pleasure to meet the other 2. And so tell us about today's guests.
Marianne Shuko is not a nurse who writes, but a writer who happens to be a nurse who has cared for hundreds of dementia patients over a 20-year career. Her novel, Blue Hydrangeas, an Alzheimer's love story, is a testament to the power of love in the face of this heart-wrenching disease. Ironically, 2 years after her novel's publication, she started living her own story when her stepfather was diagnosed with mixed dementia. She not only became his medical, legal, and financial representative, but also for her mother, who was suffering from heart failure. She has become a prolific writer and also launched her own podcast, Untangling Alzheimer's and Dementia, an AlzAuthors podcast. Our second guest, Jean Lee's parents, were diagnosed with Alzheimer's on the same day. Her writing spans her first suspicions to a decade later, holding her parents' hands as they passed. She believed she was writing a family story, but her draft morphed into her memoir, Alzheimer's Daughter. Lee believes sharing vulnerability supports others and helps them heal. Lee's memoirs provides a hand to hold for others going through a journey of Alzheimer's or dementia with a loved one by letting them know that they are not alone. And our third guest is Vicki Tapia. After teaching approximately 10,000 mother-baby pairs the art of breastfeeding, Vicki found her energies redirected to the other end of life after both parents were diagnosed with dementia. A diary written to help her cope with caregiving morphed into Somebody Stole My Iron, a family memoir of dementia. Vicki has contributed to various dementia caregiver blogs as well as the HuffPost, been interviewed for podcasts, and had numerous speaking engagements highlighting dementia awareness. Together in 2016, our guests founded the nonprofit AlzAuthors.com, a global community of over 350 writers who are writing all about dementia from their own personal experience. This ever-growing global community is united in an effort to light the way for others, with a vision of lifting the silence and stigma surrounding Alzheimer's and other dementias through the sharing of personal stories. And with that, let us welcome the fantabulous Marianne Shuko, Vicki Tapia, and Jean Lee. Hello. How are you?
Yay.
Great.
Hello.
Great.
We did it. We got the 3 pillars here. This is so exciting. This is so exciting. AlzAuthors, you guys have created such an amazing organization and giving great platform and presentation to this kind of literature that's so needed. And, you know, in reading all of your reviews on all of your books and how much you've helped people and how much you've touched people and how many people you've resonated with and made cry and made laugh and made feel better is such an honor. It really is. And I just applaud you for all of your work, and I enjoyed reading all of your books and I have so much to say about them. But when I was trying desperately to be a good caregiver, I didn't know anybody else in my circle that had anybody with Alzheimer's. So I was winging it with a capital wing, you know, and I didn't know where to turn. And the places that I did turn to were kind of useless, you know, a lot of talk, or, you know, it was like a wild goose chase. But each one of your books really personalizes it by putting it in such a narrative way, as opposed to a scholastic educational, you know, how-to book. Because when you place these different anecdotes, you know, in a personal situation, it really touches. It's like storytelling is so powerful, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I want to start. Let me just start with Jean, and just say I so loved your book. I so loved it. There was so much in Alzheimer's Daughter that I could have got and even though my mom was completely different than your parents, right? And but the just the dialogue and the joy and the bittersweet events that occurred just hit home. And I know that if anybody reads your book, it will hit home so much, and it will make it a lot easier, and it makes it such a more elegant journey. So tell me what made you what the heck motivated you to sit down and rehash this whole story? But I think I know which character is you, but you tell me. You tell us.
So I'm Rosie in the book, and both of my parents were diagnosed with Alzheimer's on the same day. I was working full-time as a third-grade teacher as they were declining. My only sibling lived 1,000 miles away. I live in Ohio. She lives in Florida. And really the book is a result of my sister asking me to please keep a journal. Oftentimes those relationships where siblings are distant in proximity are filled with a lot of disagreement and strife, and that was not the case for me. My sister was my greatest support. And when I would call her and say these odd things are happening, she said, Jean, would you just start a journal so that when we talk, which was nearly daily, you can open that up and we can kind of see a progression in frequency and timelines, and who knows, this might even be helpful in a diagnosis at some point. So I did that for her, and it was chicken scratched weights and blood pressures and things that I found out at the doctor's office for their medical appointments. But 1 week after my mother died, I was sitting with my dad, and let me back up to say I read my way through this journey with them. I could not have survived without the stories of others who were brave enough to tell their personal story. Even though they weren't exactly like mine, they made me get up each morning, put my feet on the floor, go to work, be a caregiver. They made me know if that person survived, so can I. People like Marianne Shuko and Vicky Tapia. Then back to sitting with my dad a week after my mother died. They'd been married for 60 years, and he said to me, where is that woman I admired? He couldn't remember her name. 60 years, 1 week after she passed. And it made me think, wow, maybe my story could be helpful to somebody else who's going through this same kind of a journey, a dual diagnosis and a simultaneous decline. So I joined a local writing group to help me write my own story well, which was intended to be just for my family. And my writing group helped me flesh out the manuscript, and they said, this has a bigger scope than your family. And they encouraged me to publish it, and I did so with great guilt for telling personal stories about my wonderful parents. And after I published it, I felt so guilty and inadequate that I needed somebody to tell me you've done the right thing. And I reached out to Marianne Shuko, whose book had guided me. I did not know Marianne. I did not know Vicky except having read their books. And I sent Marianne my book, thinking she'd throw it in the trash. She doesn't have time for this. And she read it and reached back to me and said, it's lovely, it's worthy. Will you work with me to elevate these other titles written from personal experience? Do you know anyone else who else have you read? And I said, well, Somebody Stole My Iron by Vicky Tapia.
Yeah.
And that's 8 years ago.
Amazing. And when you say guilt, and you feel guilt about, exposing these sort of the private things that happen within a family, and you want to protect them. And I know I also experienced that a lot. And in doing the documentary, I think, what would my mom be okay with? Would she be okay with anything of this? And I have to, and it's really difficult for me, because it's the last thing I want to do is be exploit this situation. And yet, if we don't expose, then nobody knows, right? And so I grapple with that as well.
Susie, it wasn't just the guilt of writing the book, it was the guilt of the entire caregiving experience, because I felt like almost like I was whittling away at their personhood, and every shaving was a piece of them that I was taking away from them. I felt like I was taking everything away from the people who gave me everything throughout the whole journey. And then publishing the book was just like, oh my gosh, what have I done?
It's interesting because it feels to me, from outside looking in, you gave so much to them. You allowed them to have such a beautiful journey, the best way they could have in the circumstances, and it has such a a notebook. It feels like yeah, it has a beautiful, lovely tone to it. And if I, God forbid, had to be in that situation, that would be the situation I would want to be in, right?
Thank
and
you.
not which is a great segue to Mary Ann's book too, because Blue Hydrangea also gives me that feel because it's such a beautiful book, and it has that component of dignity in it, and that holding on to what's left and not wanting to give up, and listen, I told my mom I'd never put her in a home, right, ever. And in your book there's a similar situation, and
Yes.
yet you come to the point, right? And it also resonated with me because my mother at one point said, Susie, we were visiting a family member who was, very progressive. My mom said, not me, right? And then you turn to 20 years later and you say, she's full-blown Alzheimer's, and you say, Mommy, how are you? And she'd say, I'm great. Life is good. The alternative sucks. So which mommy do you listen to? Right? Which one do you respect, and which one? And I had to choose this one because this is who she is now. And but your story has a different twist, but because it's a story of a friend, right? So tell us a little bit about, because you've been on the show before and you told us about it, but remind people that haven't heard it because it's really gorgeous. Blue Hydrangeas.
Thanks so much. It's a novel, so it's based on people I met through my work as a registered nurse. I was a case manager at a hospital. I worked in a rehab unit at the time when I met these people, and they just really intrigued me. She had Alzheimer's. He did not, but he was medically frail, and they were quite advanced years. And she had fallen and needed to go into further rehab. She had broken her pelvis, and then she was going to go to a nursing home for rehab, and that's when I came in, and I met them, and I met their son, and their son's whole thing was he wanted to coordinate the transfer himself and bring his mother to the facility himself. I guess he maybe had feelings that maybe his dad wouldn't go through with it, so I said, that's fine, you can do that. But later on that evening at home, I just kept thinking about them and wondering what would happen if somehow they just left and they didn't leave with their son, and he didn't arrive in time, and where would they go? What would they do? And so that became the whole premise of that story. And it was based on that couple and several other couples that I had met where the husband was the caretaker, because it's usually the woman that's the caregiver, right? Caring for her mom, her husband, her children. And I knew that men are caregivers, but they often aren't projected that way. So I wanted to tell their side of the story, and that's why I chose to make it Jack be the hero of the story.
Yeah. Also, a little bit Away from Her, the movie. If you've ever seen that, it's beautiful
Yes.
too, and it has a male caregiver who's grappling with how to adjust to this new wife that's not the same wife. And it's very poignant, and I in your story he makes a pivot. I won't give it away, but I think yeah, it's from the heart, and it really resonates. It's very it's beautiful. I really love it, and I know your background started as you're a nurse. So you
Right.
saw a lot of this, right?
Oh, yeah.
And And then did it happen in your family later, right?
Yes. My stepfather was diagnosed like shortly after my book was published. So, and my mom, she was the one that was medically frail. So she was really not helpful for his journey because she had her own issues and she didn't hear well, and she just really couldn't comprehend. Not that she had cognitive impairment or anything, but she was pretty much deaf, and she just couldn't follow along in these very intricate, complicated discussions, around dementia care for her husband. So I coordinated all of that. And that was a real eye-opening experience. It's one thing to coordinate it for other people, but when you have to do it for people, that you're close to and that you care about, then it's completely different. That emotional factor is huge.
It's a whole nother story.
It's a whole other story.
It's a whole nother story, and it's not for the faint at heart, is it? It's not.
No, it's hard.
No.
It's hard.
Yeah.
That's what Kim Best says. She's one of our authors, and she says, this is hard. That's it. It's hard. So there's no easy way to get around it.
There is no easy way. I talk about that all the time. I say I made the best I could, but the best sucks. It doesn't. It's not good. It's not. It is not good. But we find a way to make it to get the best out of it. Vicki, you also, like Jean, had two people that you were caregiving for at the same time, albeit different diseases, but still there was cognitive impairment from both Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, right?
Right.
And let me just say that. Well, first of all, the title of your book is so great. Somebody stole my iron. True
story.
Yeah, I know. Listen, my mom. Somebody was stealing something at all times with my mom. Okay. Did you steal my ring? Did you steal? Everybody stole something. It's in my movie. Yeah. Did you take it?
Yeah.
It was constant.
But it was never an iron. It was
never an iron. No, it was everything else but. And truth be told, she was stealing everybody else's things. When she was living with me, it was like she'd have my daughter's earrings on, and my daughter would go, "Nanny, can I have my earrings back?" What are you talking about? She's crazy. These are my earrings. I remember buying them. Thank you. And it was like, we learned to go, yeah, they look good on you. Bye. So, I totally understand that. But I loved your book too, because I love the do's and don'ts, which I think if you've been through this journey, you'll go, uh-huh. And if you haven't, when you get to those points, then you'll think back to it and go, right, right. I'm going to do that because it's very, very on point. But so tell me, because we haven't talked to you before, how you were motivated to write this kind of book that resonates with people as, everything you wanted to know about this journey and were afraid to ask. But
And tell the iron story, please.
Yes, please do.
Okay. I'll start with the iron story. One day I got a phone call from my mom, and she says, Vicki, you need to come out here. Somebody stole my iron. I'm like, what? And she said, yeah, I think they broke into my apartment and they took my iron. Well, she had it stored in the bottom drawer of her dresser. So I said, okay, Mom, I'll check into it. And I went on out to the care facility, and sure enough, her iron was gone. And we went and we talked to the people in the laundry room. We talked to the administrator, and we put out an all points bulletin for the iron. Yeah, it was gone without a trace. So my supposition is Mom took it down to the laundry room to iron something and left it. And someone else thought, oh, an iron. Or somebody, picked it up and took it and forgot they had it, right? So the case of the missing iron was never solved.
Never.
It says a lot, though. It says so much in that one sentence. It tells you so much.
Well, yeah. And my book, like Jean, started as a journal. It was to keep my own sanity. I had
like you said, Susie, nobody around me was going through what I was going through. And so I could only talk to my friends, my kids, my husband so much about it. And they're like, okay, enough already. So I took to the computer because it never talked back, and just kept a written record of everything that happened and transpired. About a year or so into it all, I thought, I should probably put this into some kind of journal for my family so they can have it as a memento. So I kept all my notes and kept writing, and things I kept remembering things, this story, that story. And so I kept finessing it. And then I got done. And finally, after a couple of years, 3-4 years, I don't know, I went to Kinko's and had it, I printed out and spiral bound and gave one to each of my kids, and I was done. However, I lent it out to a couple friends, and they were like, why aren't you publishing this? And I'm like, I don't know. And then a friend said, I loved your book, but how does it apply to me? If my mom had Alzheimer's, what can you tell me how to do this or what I shouldn't do? So that was the impetus for my do's and don'ts at the end of the chapters. Thank you, my friend. And I added those. Then I started thinking about, guilt. If I do this, my brother will never speak to me again. So I put it away in a drawer. 3 years went by, and it kind of took root and started to sprout, because friends would say, I heard you wrote a book. Can you share the manuscript? And after probably the fourth or fifth person said, why aren't you publishing this? I reevaluated and thought, okay, fine. My brother doesn't even talk to me now, but others doesn't make. So it became a book. And a little bit like Jean, I just had that guilt, like, I'm putting out private stuff about my family. So the greater part is that I could find very little to read back in the early 2000s about anything to do with this. There was manuals and doctor books and how-tos, but I wanted to hear from a person that had gone through it and what they'd learned and what they did to get through it. How did they survive? And there was very little written. So I decided I would fill that niche by
it's a gift.
adding my book.
It's a gift what you guys, all three of you, have done, because that's what we're looking for, is like, they went through that. And how did they get through that? And did they feel, were they pissed off, or were they,
Yes.
right? It's
They
like,
were.
yeah. And did they, and did they get mad? I mean, there was one point when my mom was living with me, and she's so tiny, she's 5 foot tall, right? And I was like, I'm going to lift you up and put you in your room right now, because she was being so
Contrary.
Contrary. And I was like, and I thought, and then for a second I stopped and went, what am I doing? Like, who am I? Like, it's like, I had no idea what was going on. I mean, I felt so bad, but then reading other people's things, everyone gets to that point at some point, and I had to laugh about it. I mean, I know if my mom was in her wits, she'd go, excuse me? She would be, but it gets you to that point sometimes. Mm-hmm. It really does.
I think our mothers sound similar.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Just from what you said.
Yeah, no, it could be. Wait, was she a little pistol?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so
before we
go on.
Okay, go ahead. No, I was going to say, before we then dive into the next step, which was creating the community that you created, which is I wanted to just ask each of you about just writing during this process in general, even if it's something, and this is for those out there who are maybe going through it right now, is the writing process during this, even if you're not planning on publishing a book or making a book, but just, do you find it to be therapeutic? Did you find it to be something that, boy, this really enables me to move to the next, because I now have kind of taken that on my brain and put it on paper? Mm-hmm. Which is something you would recommend for those who are going through it right now, even if they're not planning on doing a book?
I definitely would recommend it as a coping mechanism. It worked wonders for me. I felt the stress would come out my fingers into my computer, and it helped me face another day, because I could leave that behind then and move to the next day, reload, decompress. It was a coping mechanism for me, definitely.
Yeah.
And I would encourage people to keep a journal for sure. Jean, you have different
It was
thoughts.
not. For me, people ask me, was this cathartic? And nothing could be further from the truth for me. It was agony to write it. And I would put it away. It's like, no, I can't do this anymore. And it was basically agony because of the guilt. And I'd put it away. No, I'm not coming back to this. And then it would come to me in the night, or it would come to me as I was driving to work. And these beautiful phrases would come to me. And I'd think, oh, I've got to go back and write that. And those beautiful things would come to me. That's what would draw me back to it. But so it was a mix of agony countered by beauty for me.
It's the metaphor of like of diamonds coming from the pressure, right? I mean, it takes that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that's what with all of us, though.
Yeah. Even though it was painful, I don't think you would have go back and say, "Now I wouldn't have done that."
No, and it was painful until we formed AlzAuthors. And through AlzAuthors, we have healed one another, and we take on the purpose of healing others.
What do you say, Marianne, about that?
My experience with Alzheimer's was pretty much professional. At the time I wrote my book, I had 3 aunts who had it and understood the situation from that point of view, which I was not their caregiver, but I witnessed. So it wasn't really like a part of me in the sense that it was with Jean and Vicky. But I knew just through my work of how people in this situation are just starving for information, and stories are great informers. So that is really why I wanted to write this particular story, because I could have wrote a book about anything. Little did I know at the time that this was a very hard subject to put out there. So I didn't really feel like I was being healed by it until after meeting with Jean and Vicky and starting AlzAuthors when my stepfather was diagnosed. That was like where I went. I had these 2 very close friends that we worked together, and they helped guide me through that whole horrible situation where, like I said before, I had helped other people navigate that journey, but it's different when you're the one driving the train on that journey. It's you can't even imagine until it happens to you what it feels like, and all the obstacles and everything you encounter, because everybody gives you these pat answers as to what to do next and all that, but nobody tells you about all the little rabbit holes that surround each step, and where the mines you're going to step on, and how things aren't going to work out the way you would expect them to. So that was very healing for me, is having them there to help me along the way. I wouldn't have made it through that.
I totally relate to that. I think, I haven't written a book, but I've made movies. And, my mom and the girl, I was encouraged to do it because the story was so powerful, and ridiculous and like unexpected. And my mom, which is my mom, that just personifies her. And I thought, no one's going to want to, this is not a universal little story. It's the little one-off. But we got so many people saying, you told my story. Thank you. That's my mom. That's my aunt. That's my grandma. That's my sister. That's my wife. And so we were blown away, and
we couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Because we were, when we were sitting in the edit bay, we're like, is anyone going to relate to this at all? This is so specific. It's so, and to find out that there's so much shared in everyone's individual story it was mind blowing, like you said.
And I used to go to my mom because she was alive up until last year, and I'd say, "Mommy, I'm so proud of you. I'm telling your story, and it's touching so many people." And I said, and she'd go, "What? why? And I go, because you're fantastic. And she'd go, that's true.
So cute.
Did you find that same thing, that there were personal things that you thought, oh, no one's gonna, this has got to be so unique, and you have people go, oh my gosh, I experienced the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Shaking heads,
Absolutely.
Yep. For those listening right now, everyone's nodding. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
People would say to me, this story is my story too, which like really meant a lot to me, because I felt that kind of the same way when I put it out there, and it was such a niche topic. And when I wrote it, it's not a long book. It's only about 50,000 words. And I had all these chapters, and I didn't know how to make them flow. And I remember laying all the chapters on the floor in the living room, and then just like moving them around to put them into the sequence that I wanted, and wondering if that was even going to make any sense, because it has flashbacks, they go back into the past and explain what happened and then what's happening today. And it was a very urgent story. Like, there's a lot of action, and stakes are high and all of that toward the end. So yeah, it was it did resonate with a lot of people. And when people would write to me and write reviews on Amazon and let me know how much it meant to them when they saw themselves.
I just think that all these stories don't just apply to dementia and Alzheimer's. It's really how we deal with any kind of challenge. And, their challenges are, they run a certain course. They may have different, lanes, but nevertheless, there's the same kind. There's similar bumps, and so I think there's some kind of universality to it. So look at that, I said that word. Okay.
Very good.
Well,
So I just wanted to add that, now 8 years later, after the formation of AlzAuthors, and over 350 authors and their books that we feature, each one is a specific story of events that they think are completely their own and will not resonate with anyone else. And in reality, they all resonate with everyone, because they're just all details of a progression that caregivers who read them can see, that can key into, oh yes, something like that is happening in my journey.
And to be prepared for something that might happen if you're going
Yes.
through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What could happen.
And yeah, you're not going to get sucker punched as much as we all did, right? when your mother, who loves you like more than life itself, goes, "You're a whore," you're like, "What? Where did that come?" I mean, I think I would have been better prepared for that. But
Right.
I think it's amazing that the three of you came together. You didn't know each other before you wrote your books. So how did it happen? Tell us this magic.
That became what you
That
created.
became AlzAuthors, which is so incredible. Now you're an official 501c3 nonprofit. Bravo! I really think you guys have it's amazing, and you're running on fumes, guys. I mean, we need to raise money for our documentary, but they also need support. So don't forget that, everybody, because these kinds of things take a little bit of work and manpower, female power, woman power, whatever.
Mary Ann, you tell the story.
So I had written and published the novel, and had a really hard time finding my audience for it. So at the time, I belonged to a different author group where we all helped each other by sharing our books on social media and websites and newsletters and blogs and things like that. It was a partnership. And I was with them for about a year or so, and then one day it just dawned on me, like, why don't I see if I can find other authors of Alzheimer's books and see if they might want to do the same thing? So I reached out to Jean, and I asked her, and she said, it's a great idea. We decided to do a 1-month campaign, and she got Vicki to join us. And so it was for 1 month, Alzheimer's Month in June 2015. We were just going to feature each other's books, the 3 books, on each other's blogs, websites, social media, and present it out that way. And we really had a good time. So in November, when that came around, which is Caregiver Appreciation Month, we said, why don't we just do this again? And then in the following year, in 2016, is when we decided, why don't we start instead of like blogging and trying to get blog posts elsewhere, why don't we start our own blog? And every day in June, we will feature a new book, which was like an amazing undertaking. But we were doing it Monday to Friday, so it was going to be 20 books. Wow. We didn't even know 20 people, so we started reaching out to authors we had read, and who were in the top spots in the Amazon categories, and reached out to people and asked them if they would like to write a blog post, and we gave them like the criteria. And at the end of the month, we still had more blog posts, but we ran out of days. So we said, why don't we just keep it going, but we'll just do it once a week. And we kept that up until last year, 2022, because we were just getting exhausted by it. And in the meantime, we had created the podcast, we were doing virtual events, and we had other things that were going on that we were involved with, and other team members as well. So we split and decided to do a blog post every other week interspersed with the podcast. And so we were doing that for a while, and then this year things kind of fell apart a little bit because I had another caregiving journey that I unexpectedly went on, and that's ended. So that interrupted my podcast. So that's kind of how we got started. We didn't know each other. We didn't have a plan. We just wanted to share the books. We knew that it was important. We knew that caregivers were dying for information. Everybody here was looking for information at one time and couldn't find it. You know, Susie and I always correlate it to like the caregiver, 50, 60-year-old woman, I think, in the evening, finally, her loved one's put to bed for the night, and it's quiet, and she says, let me see if I can get some answers to my questions. I got like 15 minutes. I'll go on Amazon, I'll go on Google, type in, caring for mom with dementia, and I get a million hits. And so I start clicking, and then soon I'm lost, and I don't even know what I'm looking at anymore or what I'm looking for. But at AlzAuthors, if you come to AlzAuthors.com and you're looking for something to help you with caring for your mom, you're going to find a collection of like 50 or 60 titles that have all been vetted by experienced caregivers and authors. And you're going to find something in that small cohort that's going to work for you, that's going to relate to you, and you don't have to waste your time sifting through a lot of other stuff that's not relevant.
That's amazing. And so I'm going to throw this to Vicki. When Marian says you vet it, it's vetted by caregivers. So what is the criteria for someone to, submit their book to AlzAuthors, and what do you look for? And who does the vetting? How does it work?
Okay, good question. It's evolved over time. The way we did it the first year is considerably different than the way we're doing it now. So I'm just going to talk about now.
Yes.
When someone approaches us and says they would like to pursue becoming an AlzAuthors, we'll direct them to our submission form, in which they fill out, and they give us all this information about their book. And we have certain requirements that you need to have a certain number of reviews, like I think it's 5 to 10 reviews, and you need to be on 2 forms of social media actively, not just pretend, and be open to promoting for other people's books. This is a collaborative endeavor. We're not out to just promote our own book, but we are, under the same tent. And it involves then for every book that we look at, we need to read it first before we get too far into the process. So if the submission form looks good, they've met our criteria, then we'll ask them to send us a book to read. And we have our editors, the 3 of us, and we have 3 other people that are volunteers, another one of our board members, and a couple other people that read books. And we then decide, sometimes it might be a joint, someone might say, what do you think about this? And the rest of us will put in our 2 cents worth, and we'll decide whether or not we're going to invite them. But if they pass muster, they'll be invited to become an AlzAuthor, and they'll be invited to write a blog post for us, and we'll move forward from there. We are booking about 7 months into the future right now, so there is a bit of a wait.
So,
Yeah.
Jean, what is the muster that you have to pass when you read the book? What's the muster?
Well, number one, it has to be written from personal experience. Even though we have caregiver guides and children's books and fiction, but they are all written based upon a personal story. Even the caregiver guides. We do not want stages of Alzheimer's, medical terminology, names of drugs, clinical studies. It has to be written from the heart, and it has to be well written and well edited. Mm-hmm. And I just add to what Vicki said in that we continue our promotion of these authors forever. It's not a one and done. We keep circling back to them and creating social media for them. And our intention is, since we're a global organization, and really Marianne and Vicki and I have only met in person a couple of times in the 8 years. I mean, we work in a virtual office space, a Slack space. It's very important that all of our authors buy into the fact that they are promoting the works of other people, that we are a reciprocal community like that. It's, I think Vicki, Marianne, and I, and every author that comes to us comes because of their own work. They want to promote their own book, but they soon learn that there is so much more value in being one of a huge organization of over 350 authors who are lifting you up.
Right.
That's the value, instead of being one lone person trying to get your story out there. And you come to love the other books, and it is a real sisterhood, brotherhood that we form between our authors, because we've all walked some parts of the same path.
You get submissions. How many of those submissions, percentage-wise, loosely, do you reject?
About 40, I think.
I was going to say
40%.
40%. Yeah, I agree.
It has to touch the heart. It has to touch the heart and be well written.
Yeah. It's interesting because as with my podcast, and I've met so many caregivers because we're in our 6th season. So I've met a lot of authors, and I've had so many of my guests ask me to put in a good word for them to you.
Really?
Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Say, I really got to get into
So-
AlzAuthors. So can you put in a good word for me?
Do you ever run into where it's like it's a great book, but you go, wow, it's just too similar to this one, or does that matter? Does it? I mean,
No, that doesn't matter.
because it's
No.
at all. Because do you ever think, boy, it's gonna be run out. We're gonna run out of stories because
No.
no, because you don't, because
we're all
everyone's
snowflakes.
life experience is so we are with all the similarities. Yeah.
I think that has been what's so beautiful about Marianne creating the podcast. For podcasters, it's like, how do I find guests? Well, we have 350 plus guests. Like, hey, I want to do a podcast. We've got them ready and waiting because they've written a book, and we've featured their book on AlzAuthors, and they all want to be on the podcast. So that's been so unique.
Yeah. And I think even with Love Conquers Alzheimer's, we have people that are dealing with Alzheimer's. They're caregivers or they're experts. And you think, are we going to run out? Are people going to get bored? And sometimes I think, am I saying the same things I said last time? But it's okay. It's okay.
And not everyone hears or sees everything.
Yeah.
So, it's okay. And there are shared experiences, of course, but everyone does have that unique angle.
Yeah.
Now, do you give feedback, and then do they maybe sometimes come back and they make it in? Has that happened?
Definitely. If someone comes to us and they have been afraid of social media, they have no social media, we'll help them. We'll say, let us help you start your account. A lot of people, they have no idea how to make a graphic to put out on social media. We'll put the time in to help them. And if we see them grab onto that and take off with it, we'll say, please resubmit, or resubmit once you've had this gone over by an editor. The door is always open, again, as long as it's a personal story.
Mm-hmm. Will you give specific notes, like you said, that those 100 pages about that personal history, just, that needs to go away or something? Will you be that specific? I
would say I've had some books like that, and I won't say that needs to go away, but I'll say our audience is not interested in that. They want to read about your Alzheimer's journey, not your personal family history. So that's the way I handle that.
Sometimes we will give a couple specifics, like on page 45, you might notice da-da-da, and just say you probably would need an editor to go through your book. So just to kind of get them started, so they know that we're not just making this up, that there actually are some things that they could fix and then be considered.
How long's the process from the time somebody submits to you either get back to them, yay or nay?
Yeah.
Is it
We try to get back to them fairly soon, within a few days, to say, please
wow.
send us your book. So then the ball's in their court. They've got to get the book to us. And then once we get the book, we have to read the book. And then if we accept them, we'll write back and say, we'd like to invite you to become an AlzAuthor, and this is what we need from you, and give the list of things we need, and say we can't save you a spot until we get all your information. So then it's in their court again. And some people are very quick. I've had people turn around and the next day I have everything, and it's good. I've had people a month or 2 months or more that just you wonder what's going on. And because they were so eager, and they disappear.
I want to say it. I want to give you another compliment, is that I know, I won't say the name, but I know another author who been a guest on our show, and then had self-published and went on, became an AlzAuthor, and now has a proper publishing deal. And that's,
I know who it is.
And I know you know. Yeah, someone we all love dearly.
Yes, dearly.
And so you provided that opportunity. So, and it's because this particular author is very self-motivated and very, he or she is very resourceful, and really used the platform to benefit the progression of this book. So it can be done if you're listening and you feel very ambitious, and you want to start seeding your art. I mean, this is a wonderful organization, and again I say support this organization as well, because there's not enough support, and there's not enough real support. I'm very blunt these days, but there's just not enough real support for caregivers. There's a lot of hyperbole and a lot of noise out there, but that doesn't mean it's good care. It's good support. There's a lot of people that see a big number of caregivers, the 53 million caregivers, and 53 million times $1 is $53 million, right? So there's a lot of there's a lot of capitalism going on. So be careful. Be careful about the information that you're taking. Be careful of the sources. Look for people like Vicki and Jean and Marianne, who actually have walked the talk, been in the trenches, and get it, and actually have a real purpose. Because honestly, I've been in this community for 17 years now. When my mom was diagnosed, she passed away last year, was diagnosed 16 years before that. And this industry has grown so big because of the population of caregivers. And so whenever there's, an opportunity for people to capitalize on that, they will. So that's become an issue. And I'm just putting that out there because here we have a great, AlzAuthors is authentic. It's real. It's nonprofit in the most, nonprofit way you can be. And so, I mean, there's nonprofits who are nonprofit, but, just try to be discerning about where you're getting your information from, because it's really important, because a lot of times, a lot of care support is no support really out there. So this is a place to go to really get good support. And
I think you consider, right now I'm looking at 4 different people who are past it. They're not caregiving anymore, but they're still here. And that to me tells you it's far from performative, far from just surface and opportunistic. These are people who really care. And I think, if you're out there looking for people who care, consider that. Consider the ones that are still doing it after their journey has ended.
yeah.
Thank you, Dawn. I wanted to just say, too, that I would never want to discourage someone who is self-published from submitting to AlzAuthors, because both Marianne and I are self-published authors. But we did it with precision, and we wanted to put a really quality product out there with a good cover. And we look for the common story, the everyday person's story. So if you're self-published and you've done it well, please consider submitting.
Wow, this is great. Do we have anything that we missed that you guys want to put out there, talk about, compliment, say anything? What's a recipe? I don't know. Anything.
This is our 8th anniversary, our 8th birthday in June.
Congratulations. Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary. That's awesome.
We've just started a new initiative in the past year to these books that live online on our website. We have begun custom caregiver collections where people can order a custom set of these books for their senior care community or a doctor's office, so we're trying to bring them out of cyber and really into people's hands.
Oh, that's great. That's really
wonderful.
Great. Yeah, we can put that in the show notes too. So let me know about that.
Yeah, but we have you saying it, so it's fantastic.
Yeah, we have you saying it now. Yeah.
I'd like to tell you about the most recent event that we did, which ended up being a huge success. And I'll spill the beans on it just because it's us. So we wanted to put on a poetry reading. So we had about 17 books of poetry in our collection. So I was the one in charge of this project, so I take complete responsibility. So I wrote an email introducing, inviting these authors to come to the poetry reading. And when I finished it, I double-checked to see who I was sending it to, and I had it set to go out to everybody on the list. Everybody we mail to, which is thousands of people. And so I said, no, I don't want that list. So I changed to the list that I had made for this particular event and sent out the email. And then the next thing I know, I'm getting responses from people that I'm like, that person's not on the list, and why are they wanting to come? And they're not a poet. And then I looked and I saw that what I did was I didn't save it after I switched the list to the list of 17 people, and it went out to thousands of people. So I said, oh God, what are we going to do now? Because, I'm getting all these great responses from people that we weren't expecting, and now I have too many people.
Right.
So we said, okay, it is what it is. We'll just let everybody come, and whoever comes, and we're just not going to worry about it. And so we ended up with over 30 poets on that day, which is a lot of poets.
That's amazing. Yeah,
it's a lot of poems. It took us about 2 hours to get through everybody, and they got to read twice. So they got to read 2 poems or whatever.
Oh,
and
nice.
it got so much the commentary and the response to it was just tremendous. And like, we didn't expect that. I didn't expect that. I mean, I figured it would be a good event, but I did not expect the breadth of it. And to sit now, you can either listen to it on our podcast. It's in 2 episodes. I had to split it in half. Or you can watch it in whole on our YouTube channel and see the poets reading their works. And some of them, I mean, there was laughter and tears and people's stories. Some of the poems were very elegant and complex, and others were just very simple and just told all of these different points of view and stories about their loved one, about their mom and the husband. I mean, it was just, you didn't want it to end. It was a beautiful thing. So it's called Poetry for the Dementia Journey. You can find it on our website, on our podcast, and on our YouTube channel.
Beautiful.
Lovely.
See? It was a beautiful mistake, but that you
It
made.
was a beautiful mistake. We were like, okay, well.
That's kind of the whole story of AlzAuthors. We never had a master plan in this. It just was fly by the seat of our pants. As people came to us, it's like, okay, we'll make this grow.
That's kind of what caregivers do. They fly by the seat of their pants.
That's right.
I just enjoyed talking to you guys. This has been long overdue. And, we love Marianne. And by the way, thank you for being so supportive of everything that I've been doing. You are always retweeting and reposting, and you're just really, the real deal. You are the real deal for sure. Yeah. So
We
thank
are all
you.
in it together.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Vicky
for having us.
Tapia, Jean Lee, Marianne Shuko.
Thank you.
You guys are awesome. Go to AlzAuthors if you need anything. Get those new compilations of books for gifts, and listen to the poetry webinar and be part of the community, and know that if you go to AlzAuthors, you're getting good information. It's real. So thank you, ladies, and I love you so much. I think you guys are
Thank you,
fantastic.
Susie.
Thank you.
Love you too.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
you.
Thank you.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I love those ladies, don't you?
They're
was
the
fun.
real deal. They're really
That
the
was
real
fun.
deal.
That
Yeah.
was fun.
I mean,
Marianne cracks me up because when we first interviewed her, and we felt like she was very like scholastic and prim and proper. We didn't know, and then when we told her about our podcast, I Love Lucifer, which is which is the comedy horror, and there's a lot of expletives in there, and and she went and binged it and absolutely loved it. Was like promoting it all over the place. So we just like love her because she's so surprising and so great. And this was fun getting to meet her partners too, right?
absolutely. Jean and Vicky were, you could tell that just the bond that they have, even though they said they've only met each other like twice in 8 years, actually in person. But the bond they have and their common, vision and goal.
Welcome to 2023, where people don't actually ever meet in person.
Exactly. But it's working, and they just keep growing and growing, and it's so unique.
Well,
and,
it's done from the heart. It's done from a right place. Yeah.
It's done. Yep.
And so, well, that's because
You know what it's done from? It's done from love. It is. It's done from love. It's here's a little behind the scenes. Every week we have to figure out how to get to where we need to end this thing, which is working in the word love.
Yeah.
And we just did it in a
We just did it.
smooth, seamless way. And now we have to do it again because
I don't know
now
if mine
I've
was so
done the behind the
smooth.
scenes. It wasn't that smooth. Trying to make you feel better.
Thank you. So, this podcast.
Let's see if she can do it now. Yes? What about it?
Always, at the end of every podcast, you just think, what was the engine of every one of these stories, with every one of these journeys? And I would say that the engine is love.
You would?
Because,
why? And that's because love is powerful, love is contagious, and love conquers all. It does. And we would love if you would love us, like us, follow us, share, And
If you want to
remember,
sponsor us, come on board.
Sponsor us.
We're a
If you
great.
want-
I'll make a great commercial for you.
Sure. If you really feel like you need 100% tax donation, please consider donating to No Country for Old People, our documentary that is going to hopefully change the way that our nursing care and healthcare system handles our most beloved people who are, and in fact, Gidget agrees
My
that
dog
you
agrees
should
with
donate.
that. Yeah. Yes, it's tax deductible. You can find where to donate in our show notes. It's at our fiscal sponsor is the National Consumer Voice for Quality Long-Term Care. Thank you. We love you, and we'll see you next time.
Absolutely. Take care. Bye.